to start with Jimmie Cho, who's the Senior Vice President of Gas Engineering and Distribution Operations for Sempra Energy. For those of you who may not know, Sempra Energy is a major player in the energy field, mainly in natural gas operations. It's based here in San Diego, has operations both in California and in the rest of the country. Jimmie Cho is the Senior Vice President for Gas Engineering and Distribution Operations for San Diego Gas and Electric and the Southern California Gas Company, which are Sempra Energy's California entities. But he's had a very broad range of experiences, as you'll hear, within the company. He has a bachelor's degree in geology from Brown University, another geology guy, and a master's degree in civil engineering from Stanford, and is the board of directors of the LA Conservation Corps. It's worth noting about Sempra, I'll say just before Jimmie Cho steps up, that while this is not directly part of his presentation, the company, whenever there are stock indexes that are focused on sustainable companies that are thinking about long-term environmental and other impacts, Sempra is generally included on them. So Jimmie Cho is going to talk to us now about the way in a crucial part of any gas utilities operations, that is how it keeps these operations safe, leak-free, well-repaired, and as benign for the community in all ways as they can be. He's going to talk about how geographical technology has helped Sempra in that realm. So please join me now in welcoming Jimmie Cho.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. So this is my territory. Our headquarters is less than a mile away, and I think many of you are our customers, so thank you for being here today. Thank you to Esri for hosting this event and for having us be a part of it. I want to kind of share with you very practical applications of ArcGIS, what it's meant for us, how we're using it. But the way to start is really talk about the industry. Natural gas, and Jim alluded to this, right now, there's a lot of things that are under scrutiny. Safety is paramount. Safety is a big, big item. The other one is sustainability in terms of methane emissions. So GIS, ArcGIS, is critical for us to be better at both of those spheres. A little bit of background about the company. As a single utility, now there's many companies that have merged utilities, but as a single individual utility, I think we are still the largest distribution company in terms of customer footprint. We essentially serve the southern half of California, and we manage the entire San Diego and SoCalGas system out of the Los Angeles area. The thing I want to just mention to you, two things. Number one is certainly given the miles of pipelines, you can see that having a GIS system is critical, the physical space. But look at the service history. The company goes back to 1868. There's a company called Los Angeles Gas Company. They had manufactured gas, and they used it before electricity was out there to light the streets of downtown Los Angeles. That's the history of the company. And then before I also go on, I want to acknowledge two people. Jack mentioned earlier how it's important to have visionaries, those who are sponsors, but those who carry the weight of making things happen. And one is a friend of mine who's not here because he's passed away. His name is Doug Schneider. Doug passed from pancreatic cancer last year, but Doug was really the vision. He would be here today if he were, and I'm really in his place. And one of the last things Doug got to do was actually spend a day with Jack at Esri, and that was a meaningful day for him, and he still remembered that for weeks after that trip. The other is Debbie Bowie, who's sitting over there, and Debbie does all the work. She is the person who makes things happen. So I want to acknowledge those two individuals. Now, to talk about the present, it's really important to talk about the past. And when you have a company that's 150 years old, there's a lot of archive stuff. So I found this in our archives, and it's actually worth reading. It's to Mr. Theo Hobgood Jr., Superintendent of Transportation. I think it's 1914. That's translation for Fleet Operations Manager today, by the way. Sir, I desire to call your attention to the horse that is being used at Branch 1. This horse has become so aged that he's getting stiff in his joints. This, together with other troubles, make him unable to do the work required of him. This sounds like an HR interview. I therefore respectfully ask if you can so arrange it to give me a younger and better horse, or better still, a team. The work in this office is too much for one horse. Sound familiar? Kindly advise me as soon as possible what you can do to help me out. Respectfully, Superintendent of Gas Distribution. This is a long way back, but when we think of GIS and where our journey started, it's not that different. So looking back, just even within my career time, we were a paper-based company. Our entire distribution system was laid out on 36,000 plus atlas sheets. When I became responsible for the first time as a regional engineering manager, I walked into the headquarters, and there were all these clerks with highlighters highlighting paper maps, then folding them up and putting them in company mail. So what is going on? Those are our leak survey maps. And the colors determine the leak survey cycle. Is it annual? Is it 5 years? Is it 3 years? That is how we ran the business. And this is not like decades ago. It's not that long ago. And if you were so fortunate, we also had mobile units that had the same information. It looked like this. And they came in little tin boxes. It looks like a punch card because it is, but it's actually microfiche. This little rectangle is one of those. So imagine you're an on-call supervisor or field person at 3 in the morning, and there's a broken pipeline, and you have to find the valves to isolate it and turn it off. You're literally going in front of your headlights of your truck, and you're trying to find out where those valves are. That was our GIS technology. And that wasn't that long ago. So today, where has Debbie and her team brought us? We're working with ArcGIS in a GIS enterprise portal. It is a journey still ongoing, but now we're able to take all of the digitized information and start making it work better for us so we can be safer and be more sustainable. And I want to share with you a couple of examples of how we are using that technology. Emergency management. I think all of you, or most of you in this room, how many of you are involved in emergency response, incident response? That's about half the room. So this is a real map from January of this year. In Montecito, which is Santa Barbara County, in January of this year, they suffered one of the worst storm events in their history, a 100-year flood event. 22 lives were lost. Entire cars ended up 2 miles downstream at the beach. There were boulders as high as the screen strewn all over the place. It was a tragic event. We set up an incident command. I led that IC, and we worked with the Joint Unified Command in Santa Barbara. And one of the first things we realized is it's very chaotic in the first days, but there's one common language that all first responders use. You know what that language is? It's GIS. We're all working to look at and repair and restore the same area. What made it very challenging, though, was it was so devastating. They lost roads, the highway was closed, sewers were down, cable was out, power, natural gas, water, anything you could think of was out. And they couldn't restore it in sequence like they normally do. Ironically, one of the things that had to be restored before people could come back in wasn't power. You know what it was? Sewer. They did not want people to have discharge into the public realm when they were just open. So the first thing that we did was we did something for the very first time ever in an incident. We actually called out our GIS team and brought them out to the field. We set them up in the incident command room. It made it so much easier. And over time, we developed a map like this where people could see what areas are damaged, where can I go back in, where are they restoring, how long can I expect before I can go back into my house? So without GIS, we could not do this. And it helps everyone to anticipate and manage the future in an emergency. I showed you that atlas sheet, which is one of these. So now what we can do is actually take mobile units and do breadcrumbing. That's where we're headed, where you literally walk the survey area, it's picking up real-time data, and then it's uploading it. So what does that do? It ensures that we've met our compliance requirement. There's a documentation of that. It's real-time and it's documented. Secondly, let's say the surveyor comes across a section where there's a leak that wasn't known before, and it's a leak that should be addressed quickly. So rather than finding his car, getting on the radio or his MDT mobile unit, now the unit can automatically report that out to the dispatch office, issue an order, dispatch a crew, and start the repair process. That's what the technology enables us to do. This is critical for safety and compliance, things we have to always improve on. Public methane emissions map. This is about transparency. It's about letting the public know, hey, there are places where there are leaks. If you smell a leak, this may be why. And here's what we're doing to inspect it, and here's when we're going to be repairing it. Now, this section of map is very important. Can anyone guess why this is an important section of our entire service territory? My house is in the middle. So I just pulled up my house, the neighborhood, and there it is. You know, it's giving me an expectation of what's going on there. It's non-hazardous. It's going to be looked at, and it'll be repaired once it gets scheduled. So to earn the public's trust, we have to be transparent. We have to let them know there are things that need to be repaired. The system's not perfect, and here's how we're going to address it by when. Damage prevention. There are many threats to natural gas utility systems, many different threats. The number one threat, believe it or not, is third-party damage. So what is that? That's when a contractor, perhaps, without knowing or without seeing the mark, goes out, starts to excavate to put a water line, to put in a trench, and they hit a gas line, and then next thing we know, we've got what's called a broken and blowing. We have to go out there and address it. So the way GIS is helping us improve in this area is anytime a contractor calls us and says, I plan to do work in area X and Y, we can actually polygon out that area. We issue a ticket to do what's called a locate and to mark out all of our infrastructure. And if you see in the streets those painted lines, white, red, blue, green, that's what that is. It's saying there's a water line or a cable line or a power line. But what we can do now is we can pull in information and see what's the activity that's driving this. So in this case, I don't think we can see it, but this is actually a TV production company that wants to construct a grave, temporary grave, 6 feet deep for a TV show. And they did the right thing, they called us. And what we can then see is a contractor someone who's had problems in the past? Are they high risk? Should we have personnel on site to watch them as they do it? It allows us to make good risk-based judgments and decisions. This is probably one of the most important things I do in my job, and that is determining how best to invest capital, CapEx. The system has 50,000 plus miles of distribution line. And what we can no longer do is say because something is X years old or X decades old, it needs to be replaced. What we have to do is take an approach that looks at all variables. What are they? Performance. Has that line leaked? The area around it. Are there trees that are a problem for all infrastructure? Earlier, there's a discussion about paving. Is the city planning to pave that next year? And if so, do we want to accelerate the work we're going to do? Erosion. Has our line been compromised because there's erosion that's changed the cover of depth over that line? And based on that information, we can make smart decisions. Age is one factor. It's not the factor. And so we're not just going out there saying, it's part of this vintage, let's take them all out and replace them. We're saying, let's do what is the highest risk based on all of these variables I just mentioned to you. And then in terms of our journey, where are we headed? Where do we want to go? As an enterprise asset management system, what we want to do is take all of our systems that we currently have and really hub them around our GIS portal. That's a work in progress. So as an example, under real-time and near real-time monitoring data, our gas control facility sees a SCADA screen. And if something goes wrong, they see a pressure drop or something that indicates it needs attention, they can go and say, well, you know what? That was last inspected on date XY, or that is part of this data management record keeping, and they can look up information about it. It's really bringing things together into one place to do things to integrate that information and make smart decisions. That is where we want to head with ArcGIS. then in closing, I want to share with you a story. In the early 90s, I was a project manager, and I had the pleasure of going out and training employees in the field, these are frontline employees, about a new network-based technology. And I did this at many bases. And at one base afterwards, the manager of that facility came to me and pulled me aside and put his arm around me and said, I really didn't want to embarrass you. I didn't want to say it in front of all the employees, but this technology you're talking about, what'd you say it was? The internet? It's never going to work. It's just not going to work. Says, again, I don't want to embarrass you, but I can tell you this. So when I think of technology and GIS, what I have to think about is what's ahead, right? What's next? That's the theme of this conference. What is the next thing? What inspires us to that? So this was the solution to the letter, right? This was the next thing. And can you imagine when that thing was rolled out, the employees are going, what is that? My horse, yeah, he's tired, but he's a good horse. I don't want to get rid of him, right? But this is a world and a paradigm shift. What hasn't shifted, and that was mentioned this morning, is the basics of what needs to get done. Transportation, it's not changed. It's the mode of transportation has changed. The same is true with GIS. So what excites me, and kind of I spin around in my head like what can happen, is the unknown. What can we do with GIS to enhance safety, to enhance sustainability, and to make us more productive? Thank you very much.